You're listening to the Scottish Football Forums podcast, the home of Scottish football banter.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Scottish Football Forums podcast. I'm John and I've got another guest special, celebrity Hibs fan and TV presenter, actor, probably more famous Pantomine Villain, Grant Stott. Grant, welcome along. How are you doing?
I'm good, John. Thank you very much for inviting me along. And thank you for that very, very gentle introduction.
Yeah, it's interesting how this actually came about because Colin McCredie retweeted the STV programme, The Game, that was filmed before France '98, and you commented, and I thought, I'm going to ask you if you want to come along, so thanks very much. I mean, did that bring back good memories watching that programme with your good old friend, the late Andy Gray?
It was a surprise on a number of levels, because obviously I'd known Andy and very dear friend of mine for many, many years, and I think that date that was filmed in 1998, and it was about the World Cup in '78.
Yes,
and that was round about the time I met Andy, so I think he must have already filmed that just before we actually met for the first time. And for whatever reason, it was something that just wasn't on my radar at all. Andy had certainly not mentioned it. I'd worked with Alex Norton as well in the past, so I knew Alex. And this popped up not long after Andy sadly passed away. And as you say, it was Colin McCredie who put it on Twitter, and I just sat and watched it, and it was just lovely on so many levels. It was lovely to see Andy in something I'd never seen him do before. Lovely to see Andy in a play, which obviously had comedy elements in it, but had a wonderful storyline. And lovely to see Andy doing something about football, of which he famously had no idea at all, in any way, shape or form. A Perth lad, born and bred, and he would often, whenever I had any football chat with him, I'd say, I was at the Hibs game on Saturday or whatever. He would go, yes, St Johnstone, la 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 la. And that would be his way of sort of ingratiating himself with a football chat. So for him to do a play all based around football and Scotland's performance in the World Cup in '78, I thought was just lovely. And it's yet another one of these little moments of which I've had many, where I just want to phone him and talk to him about things that have happened and that, because I would love to have had to talk to him about the making of that, because it's a lovely wee four-hander, the play. So and then it led on to us having a chat. So there we are.
Exactly, and the thing is, it was annoying me because I remember a lot about that France '98 build-up, and that was also a part of it. But you couldn't find it anywhere on YouTube, and I'd obviously spoken to Colin previously, and this got mentioned, and then I found it. I sent it to Colin, he tweeted it. It was just brilliant.
Right.
Alec Norton's another one that didn't like football, but he played a good part of a Rangers man.
Well, that's the thing about how good actors they all were. Because. One thing I think a football fan, out of all, walks of life, a football fan can spot somebody that's faking it, can spot somebody that's not a true football fan. So I think they all did a very good job of carrying off their own Celtic and Rangers performances in that particular play.
Yeah, the line I liked him, we have a great understanding, we're both bigots. I just thought that was absolutely
class. Says it all. That summed it all up. Yeah, it was a great piece. It was a great piece.
It definitely was. And right now you're doing the afternoon show on BBC Radio Scotland, which I listened to for the first time today. And thanks very much for playing my request.
Well, it was the luck of the draw, yeah. The afternoon show's my day job now. On BBC Radio Scotland, and it's only 2.5 hours long, but the work that goes into it is unlike any bit of radio I've ever done before. I mean, I worked in commercial radio for nearly 30 years before I left, and a very different way of working. But I love doing what I'm doing now, and I love the fact that I've been given a whole new challenge and a whole new set of skills that I've been working on since I left Forth in in 2017. So it's about 4 years now since I left. 3 years since I started working permanently on the afternoon show. So it's been great. I love it. I work hard on it. I mean, that's what I will be doing later on tonight is looking at my script for tomorrow, my notes for tomorrow. I've got a film to watch for tomorrow. I've already watched 2 films already because we review 3 films on a Thursday. So there's films to watch, there's books to get across, or a documentary. I interviewed a documentary maker, Nick Bloomfield, yesterday for tomorrow's show. That's pre-recorded, thankfully, but I had to watch that on Monday. So yeah, there's a great deal of prep, which wasn't so much the case when I worked at Radio 4th. When I worked on 4th, it was a rock up, turn up 10 minutes before you go on air, talk pish for 4 hours and then go home, but I'm maybe sort of doing myself a disservice, but yeah, it's a different ball game altogether what I'm doing now.
Yeah, I like the concept. How I mean, you've also got some music in there, but there's a lot of chat involved, and a couple of very distinguished guests were on today. Because obviously, as we're recording this was St Patrick's Day, so there was a couple of good themes in there, and I thought it seemed to work real well, and you can tell from listening to it the amount of preparation that you do. And thanks for fitting me in amongst your preparation for taking a wee break. So
you got me in advance.
So
but is that? I mean, so there's on average the way that we work, and it has changed a lot. COVID has changed it a lot. The show a year ago is different. Was a different beast to what it is now. We don't, a big part of the show was having guests in the studio with you. We would have live bands in doing sessions. We would have conversations around the table about the films, and now it's all done remotely. And now, Janice is still doing the show from home, and she does it on a Monday and a Tuesday. We do play more music now. The items are we get through maybe over 2.5, and it's now 2.5 hours. It used to be just 2 hours. It's now 2.5 hours long. And over the course of a show, we'll probably have about 5 items that I need to research for each show. So that's like 10 a week for me, which can be an interview with an author. Today it was Healy from the Saturdays. He's got her solo career out, so you listen to her music, you look back on her and do the research there. We had an author on, and Danny Wallace, who's got a kids book out, so you get across that. So it's all part of the preparation of getting through each show. But yeah, we do play a lot of music in it as well, which I've always kind of pushed for, because that's why I think it's a big part of why people tune into radio is to listen to music. And yeah, there's no reason why we've certainly never had a complaint from anyone getting in touch saying, I think you're playing far too much music, Grant. So that's not happened yet.
Yeah, I like the variation today, I must say. As I say, I've only listened to the ones, so maybe I'll listen.
It is varied. We do have a lot, and we have some fantastic names. I mean, I've interviewed Tim Minchin, Joanna Lumley. I had the guys from Arab Strap. Aidan Moffat was on recently. It's phenomenal when I look back at the guests that we get on and the access now, especially in COVID, the access that we have to people, because, people are at home and you can now get them on a Zoom chat, and you can now get them at the other end of an internet connection. So people are more available now than they've ever been. So we've been particularly lucky when people have put books out. We've had access to some great guests, great names. Shakin' Stevens was another one. Wow. I interviewed him and I was really quite starstruck. It was my whole youth there, my whole 80s. So it's from that point of view, it's a great show. I'm so delighted that I'm working there just now.
And you've come full circle from the BBC, because that's obviously where you started off, BBC Education. So
it was round about the same time. Commercial radio was where I started in 1990, and within 6 or 7 months of working there, my mum spotted an advert in the Scotsman for a job was going at BBC Radio Scotland. They were looking for a presenter for a children's education programme, and so she cut it out and gave this little advert to me. This was 1990, obviously, and at this point I'd only just started at Radio 4th, and she said, go and apply for that. And I'm like, I've just started at 4th, what will they say? Well, worry about it if you get the job. That's always been my philosophy. So I went for the audition and ultimately got the job, and that was my first in at the BBC. So that would have been 1990. Worked in the education department for a number of years, and through working in the radio there, the opportunity came to go and do something in front of a camera, and then that was my TV career off and running as well. So yeah, I've got a lot to be thankful for the BBC. So yeah, so it did kind of feel like I was going back, and I'd kind of always known deep down that this is where I would end up at the sort of tail end of my career as well.
it's a good journey, and obviously you covered children in need at that point as well. And some of its earlier days, whenever they did the link into Scotland, what was that like doing those
Yeah,
shows?
that was my first experience of live television, was doing Children in Need, and it was again through doing education, and it was then when Children in Need was a much bigger beast than it is now, and you would go to Glasgow to the main show in Scotland, which would have been, Jackie Bird or Hazel Irvine, and then they would throw to, we're going to Aberdeen now, we're going to Inverness, but I was in Edinburgh, so I would do the links from the BBC studios in Edinburgh, and it was a phenomenal experience because, you get given your script, you're told you've got 2.5 minutes to do this link, and so you work out to the second how you're going to fill those 2.5 minutes. And then when it came to doing it live, I'll never forget, it was my first live. I had my first live insert, and they says, right, got 2.5 minutes to fill it. I'd choreographed the whole thing. So I start here, I'm going to walk there, I'm going to talk to him, I'm going to talk to them, I'm going to talk to them, and then I'm going to introduce the VT, as they've asked me to do. And just before we got started, they went, sorry, Grant, there's a problem. You've only got a minute. So I went from 2.5 minutes in my head to a minute. So I basically just went from A to Z, right, and just went straight to the end of where my planned link was. And as I got there, as I rushed through all the people I was going to talk to, walked past everything I was going to say, I then got in my ear, it's all right, Grant, you've got your minute and a half back. And I'm like, I've got nothing to say now. I've said it all. So and I'm now having to fill this an hour and a half. I meant a minute and a half. I've got to fill this minute and a half. And, it doesn't sound very long, but I can assure you, when you've got a camera looking at you and you've got nothing to say, a minute and a half on live television is an awful long time. Believe me. But I learnt my lesson. Always have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan D, just in case.
That's definitely a good learning curve when you're doing live television, having those, and obviously it's put you in good stead for the future. Another thing that you were renowned for in the day, Weemsby 902-101.
Yeah.
How professional was that compared to obviously the compatriots over in America?
Well, Beverly Hills 90210 was massive at that time. This was 1992 when that came about, and it just seemed, let's have a Scottish version. And I remember the producer came in and he goes, right, where's the Scottish Beverly Hills? And we went, Wemyss Bay. So Wemyss Bay 902-101. We had to put an extra one on in case they decided to sue us. So Wemyss Bay 902-101 was a kids' TV programme that we did. It replaced the very famous Glenn Michael's Cavalcade.
I loved that show.
That was everyone grew up with that. Everyone loved that show, Casper the Ghost and everything. So it was a bit of an honour to take over the mantle from Glenn Michael. But yeah, so that was it, and that was our start. And it was like so many things in television. It starts with great promise. It starts with, this is the beginning of a fabulous career, and it basically got axed after 14 months. Nothing really to do with what we were doing. We had all sorts of problems with not putting too fine a point. We had a sort of bit of a scandal in the show, and so much that Eric Cullen, who was wee Bernie from Rabsy Nesbitt, was on the show at the time. His scandal and his tragic demise broke right in the middle of our show, and we never really recovered from that, I don't think. And the show was pulled the following Easter, and ultimately, what happened to Eric was really sad. It was a terrible injustice how his life and career got taken away from him. But yeah, it was a wonderful journey in a very short space of time.
Yeah, definitely. Tell us a little bit about how you got there in the first place, because obviously, did you go? Was it drama school that you had to go through to get to where you were at that point, or was it more unconventional?
No, drama school was the plan. Drama school was the plan all through high school. I was absolutely going to be an actor. There was only one profession for me, and that was an actor. I was an extrovert. I was a show-off. I was a pain in the arse. I was all these things at school. I did all the school plays, all the school shows, and asked my careers advisor, what do I need to get into drama college? I says, because that's all I'm going to do. And 4 O grades and 2 hires was what I was given. So I went, right, that was my target. And by the end of 5th year, I'd achieved 4 O grades and 2 hires. I went, right, I don't need anything else now. I don't need to sit any more exams. 6th year was a party. I didn't get any qualifications or exams in 6th year. I just played and had a party and organised school discos. And then left 6th year and then said, right, see you later, everyone. I'm going to drama college. Now, the one flaw in my plan was that I'd taken it for granted that, of course, all these drama colleges would be saying, Grant, come in, where would you like to sit? But they all knocked me back. That was my first real reality check in this media business, was when I got a knockback from all the drama colleges, London, Glasgow, Queen Margaret here in Edinburgh, every single one of them knocked me back. And I'm like, what do you mean you knocked me back? Because my time at school was so successful. But then, of course, I'm getting put into an audition room with other, equally enthusiastic and better individuals than I was at that time. So I didn't get in. That was a bit of a shock. So, yeah, I then ended up joining the police. My mum told me to get a proper job because I couldn't get in the drama college. Joined the police for 4 years. Didn't like it. Managed to get out and get that job at Radio 4th. And then that started my media career, where that change from the police to the radio. So, it's been an interesting journey, but I wouldn't change anything. It's been brilliant, and I've been very lucky because going from radio into television, then from children's television, I got an opportunity to do Panto in 1993, and that was through the Kings in Glasgow, and that was Dick Whittington, and then that became a regular, that became a staple. And I kind of worked my way up the poster, if you like. I was so far down. My name was so far down the poster, people thought I was the printer. And I worked and worked and worked, and was lucky enough one year to be in the same cast as Alan and Andy, and then the rest, as they say, is history on that front. So I've had a very varied career. I've done loads of different things in radio and television and stage. But I wouldn't have changed it. Yeah, it's been brilliant.
Yeah, I want to touch on the Panto just now. I was going to leave that for a bit later, but you're known as the Panto Villain. That's obviously your website address. What's making you want to play that role more than anything? Because you think of most actors like, oh, I want to be this, I want to be the star, I want to be the star goodie, but you're going the complete opposite, saying I want to be the big villain. What drives you on for that?
Longevity, I think, is the sort of what I love about it. Because when I was starting out in Panto, the first couple of years I was doing Panto in Glasgow, I was looking around, and as I say, at that time I was just a wee supporting member with no particular, role to play in the cast other than just coming on, reading lines and getting off again. And I was working with the likes of Gerard Kelly, who was the Buttons, and he was a brilliant Buttons. He's got funny bones. The guy can make you laugh just by walking on. I'm like, nah, that's not me. I'm too tall, too gangly, not funny enough. And then there's the Dame, and the Dame was always sort of an older guy, and again a comedian, a guy who's earned his career out of making people laugh. And I was like, that's not me. As much as I think I can maybe muster a giggle or two, I'm not a Dame. And being the Prince, it's too straight, and you need a good singing voice, and you need to be good looking, and I'm not any of those things. So the villain was the one that really appealed to me, because I thought the villain is a great part, because it's so important to the story, right? So it's an integral part in the show. You get this fantastic relationship with the audience. You get a great relationship with the cast, and that was, and it was Christmas 1995. 2 years of doing Panto, I went, the villain. That's my goal. That's my target, to get the villain. And it took me to 2003, so another 8 years before I got offered the part of the villain. And I've never looked back. I grabbed it with both hands with great gusto. And I've been fortunate enough to, and because, and when you ask me why the villain, over the years of doing the villain and nearly 20 years of doing it in Edinburgh, I've played men, I've played women, I've played magicians, I've played just evil people, I've played, and all these different elements to all the different villains gives you so much to get stuck into. And a few years ago, when I finally got to put a dress on and be as the Wicked Queen in Snow White, it's just fantastic. The Wicked Stepmother in Cinderella, one of the ugly sisters in Cinderella. So being a female villain is lovely. And again, it's just that I always try and do something different with the role every year. And as much as the audience know it's me and Alan, and until recently, obviously, Andy, they knew what they were going to get with us, but I always try to do just something slightly different. And that's what I love about it. It's a challenge, and getting booed as soon as you walk on. Brilliant.
Yeah, some of the names that you've had, Sam, were certainly different. Flash Boaby, Flesh Creep,
Flash Boaby,
Gobina
he was one of my
McPhlegm.
favourites.
Yeah, Gobina McPhlegm.
Gobina, I came up with that name. I came up with Gobina, Gobina McPhlegm, and our wee sister was called Huck too. I'm Gobina McPhlegm, and this is Huck. And when it was Cinderella, I think I played Hibernia, and she's one of my
Did you
favourite.
come up with that
the
Hibernia Hardup?
I was gifted that. I have to say, Alan McHugh, who wrote the script, came up with Hibernia, so I'll have to give him credit for that. But I thought that's absolutely genius, Hibernia, and she was fabulous. I loved her. She was great.
What play was she in?
Cinderella. She was the wicked stepmother, and she was a bad bitch. Yeah. So yeah, fingers crossed we get to do Cinderella again and we get to bring her back out and dust down the costume. But no, it's great. It's a massive part of my year. Missed it obviously at Christmas. It'll be different when we go back this Christmas for so many different reasons. But there's just a huge desire, a huge thirst, and everybody wants to get back to the theatre. And Panto's a big miss for everybody, and for us as well. We've really missed it. So.
Yeah, well, one of the Christmas gone there was different for all the wrong reasons, unfortunately. And obviously, Panto is associated. I spoke to Colin about this. There was a bit of worry at the time about the future for the theatre arts because of the money that was being lost. There was not going to be any Panto. I know there was, Nicola Sturgeon did give a grant out eventually. How much that will cover, we don't know. But every industry's fighting for themselves, to be fair, so it's difficult doing that conversation. But what do you think the future's going to hold this year? Are you confident that there will be Panto this year, but as you say, more likely going to be restricted?
Well, as we've learnt already in the last year, you don't know what's a month away. You don't know what's 2 weeks away. This can change literally overnight. Something can happen. A new variant could come in, so we don't know. But the way things have been going over these last few weeks, the way things have panned out with the vaccine, with the fact the vaccine seems to be handling all the different variants that are coming in so far, and there's just this sense that if this continues the way that it has done, and with the details that Nicola Sturgeon gave out about June, July getting down to level 0, then you have to think by June, then July, and then August and September, a good 3 months at level 0 or whatever. And by that point, pretty much everybody will be vaccinated by September, October, you would like to think. So by Christmas should be the time when I would like to think that's probably the point where we can all breathe a sigh of relief and pretty much be back to normal. That's your Christmas Day, that's your Panto, your Christmas days, at your visits to the shops and all that kind of thing. Whereas we'll call canny, I think, up until that point. But yeah, I will be absolutely devastated if we miss another Christmas.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't just the Panto. Obviously, people didn't see family. It was restricted. It was just awful.
You can kind of get through that because it's a one-off, and that's kind of what you chose. It's one day, it's 1 year. We'll get through, and then we can look forward to next year. But yeah, as long as we get the handle of this and come out the other end, and we'll appreciate it. We're going to appreciate all these things. We're going to appreciate going to football. We're going to appreciate just going to the pub. You think all the times you just stayed in on a Friday night. I got a memory up on my phone the other night about it came up. It was 4 years ago. I went down to my mate. He lives in Haddington, right? Haddington, it's not particularly jet set, but it's a lovely wee town. And 5 of us met there, went out for a few bevies, went to a fabulous Chinese restaurant there. And for every year after that, must go back down to Willie's and go to the brilliant Chinese down in Haddington. And we just never did it because it was just like, what I would give right now to get in my car and go and drive down in Haddington, dump the car, stay overnight at my pals, go for a Chinese, a few pints. Unbelievable.
It's just little things. Me and my wife were actually talking about how, this time last year or a year and a half ago, we were saying how we don't have a free weekend, and now it's like, well, we don't have anything now, so we'd rather have that type of life back. And
I'm not even worried about a holiday this year. It's like people saying, when can I don't want to travel. I don't want to travel, and it's nothing to do with necessarily what we're going through. It's just how it's going to be, I mean, getting on a plane is a nightmare at the best of times. You know, getting all the hassle of getting through an airport and getting on the plane and getting off the plane and getting a bus and getting through the airport. You know, imagine how difficult or tricky it's going to be for the first few months after this. So, keep me away from it. I'll take 2 weeks holiday. And as long as the pubs and restaurants in Edinburgh are open, or Haddington, I will happily spend 2 weeks catching up with my pals, going to the pub, having them over to my house, going over to theirs. That, for me, would be a brilliant holiday. 2 weeks with your mates.
Holiday at Haddington. Fantastic.
I'll take it. Get me booked in. Book it now. I'm in. You better believe it.
Exactly. I mean, the weird thing is as well, I mean, we're obviously talking about the Euros coming up. I mean, will there be some sort of crowd back there and stuff? And no, I'm certainly hoping so, because I go to the Scotland games a lot. But even just to, we can give up the 10,000 Scotland fans going down to Wembley and stuff like that. That's not happening this year. But see, even if I could just have someone else in my house to watch that game with me, that'd be great, because, it was weird when we qualified first to 23 years and everyone's in the house.
Yeah, I know. It's like, my whole point to me, and we might touch on this, football for me has been my dad. And I didn't go any football for like over 20 years. I wasn't interested in football. I was interested in my music. I was interested in my drama and all that kind of stuff. Didn't bother with football. And then around about 1990, when I started working at Radio 4th, my dad was going to match. He was going to match on his own. And by this point, I'd moved out of the house. I was living in a flat. And I thought, here's a chance for me to spend 4 hours with my dad on a Saturday afternoon every week. I'll chum you at the football, Dad. I'll just go with you. And that was my in for football. So that has been, since 1990, my pattern of going to football. And then, because of lockdown, he's up at his house watching it on his computer. I'm at my house watching on the telly, and I can't watch it with him because we're not allowed. And so I'm missing out on that, just sitting watching football matches on your own. And as you say, Scotland qualifying, you're jumping up and down. I did it on Zoom. I had my pals on Zoom on my iPad with me, so we kind of felt we were together, but we weren't really. And that was a great moment when we finally qualified. But it's just not the same. Watching the football without my dad, it's just not the same. And again, something you just took for granted.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think.
Can't wait to get it back.
Yeah, hopefully it won't be when crowds are allowed back, that people won't take it for granted. More people, you'll have more full stadiums than you used to beforehand. Let's hope so. Yeah. That would be a lovely dream.
Especially at the beginning, especially at the outset, folk will be just, let's get out and do stuff. Do you want to go to the football? Yeah. Do you want to go for a pint? Yeah. The most simple and basic things. Can't wait. Cannot wait.
It'd be amazing. So you've started the talk about football. It's interesting you mentioned you had no interest in football until around about 1990, because one of my first questions was going to be, what do you remember about the Wallace Mercer takeover of Hibs? Because I prejudged your age, but obviously you didn't get into football till around about that time. So it was simply your dad that lured you to Easter Road, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, football was a big part of my growing up. It was in the house. My dad, massive Hibs fan all his life. My brother was a massive football fan. Maybe that's why, because I rebelled against my brother, as you often do when you're wee. I was a Scotland fan, and I loved the Scotland games. And I remember watching Argentina 78, and that's why I enjoyed that play of the game as well, because I really enjoyed all of that. And what I remember about that particular part in Hibs history is that we were on our knees and we were heading for oblivion. And my dad, at the time I started working on radio, and I was doing overnights, right? I was working at 1 a.m. till 6 a.m. And when I got that job, my dad was in hospital at the PMR here in Edinburgh. He'd got his knees replaced. And at the time he was only 40, but he'd had problems with his knees since he was in the army in his 20s. So he always knew he was going to get this operation. And he was booked in this operation. And while he's in hospital, Wallace Mercer launches this takeover bid. And I had just started at Radio 4th at the time. And I remember going into the studios, and this is clearly massive news. And David Johnston, who was our head of news at the time, was doing this massive live football, or this phone-in, about the implications of what Wallace Mercer was trying to do, and blah, blah, blah. And Hibs, their previous administration had, caused all sorts of problems. But anyway, so it was like, massive news, huge news. And there was a sense of disbelief. It was like, my dad, who was in hospital, he was like, he couldn't get out of his hospital bed because his legs were, knackered. He was waiting for his knees to start to heal. So it was a really frustrating time. So he was glued to the radio at this point, to get any updates about what was going on. Then eventually did get out. And the first thing that he wanted to do when my mum picked him up from the hospital to take him home, don't take me home, just take me back, take me down Easter Road. I need to have a look and just check that it's still there. Because he'd gone through all the emotions while he was stuck in his hospital bed. He thought he would never get to Easter Road again. He thought Hibs were gone and done and dusty. So my mum drove him all the way down Easter Road, parked up outside the stadium. He had a look and went, right, you can take me home now. So it was massive, huge. And of course, I remember the hands-off Hibs stuff that was going on. And I do remember taking my dad and going to the to the Usher Hall, to the rally. And I remember there was a big controversy because John Robertson got up and spoke. He was a big Hearts star at that time. And he got up and spoke and said how he was against this particular takeover. And then, of course, it all panned out the way it was. But yeah, really in dramatic times. And that was at that point I started going to the games. And not long after that, we win the League Cup, the Skol Cup at Hampden.
It's a great end to that
this
story.
is great. Within a year of me supporting Hibs, we've won a cup. And my dad says, it's not like that every year, son. Didn't get too carried away with yourself. So that was it. Your first year of going to support your team, and you're at Hampden and you win a cup final. So it was only ever going to end one way, and that was me stuck at Easter Road every week.
It's not a bad thing to be.
Wasn't a bad. No, it wasn't bad.
Definitely.
So it was a good start, and that was it. And right the way through the 90s and the 2000s, and I ended up working at Easter Road as well. That was it. Because Radio 4th had they took out a table, the corporate hospitality for clients, to entertain clients. And sometimes if there was a couple of empty seats or something on the Friday afternoon, I would get a call from Mike Scott, who was a commercial manager, and say, right, Grant, he says, I've got 2 spare seats at the Hibs corporate tomorrow. Do you want to come? So bring your dad. So me and my dad would go, and this became a regular thing whenever there was seats available. And then one day, there was a girl called Amanda who'd just taken over the market and the commercial side of Hibs, which involved the hospitality. She gets up onto the microphone and she goes, hello everyone, welcome to Easter Road, welcome to the Right, and she was having to do the MC, and she came over, she goes, is this Radio 4th table? And we're like, yes. She goes, do you guys know anyone that would be comfortable getting up and speaking in the microphone every match day? And I'm like, yes, I think I could maybe manage that particular task. So that was my in, and I started hosting the corporate hospitality in the lounge, and that was great because again I'd done nothing like that. So it was a bit of a baptism of fire. You're going into a room of 200-300 football fans and getting on a microphone, and again I wasn't a comedian. I'm not a stand-up comic or anything. So I remember my first few games must have been terrible. Getting up and trying to crack jokes, and oh dear. But anyway, I managed to ride that particular storm, and you start interviewing the players and then come back, and I was there for years, nearly 20 years, I think.
That must have been great being able to interview some of the stars of the past.
Yeah,
any in particular that stood out for you in terms of?
Oh yeah, I mean, some footballers are better on a microphone than others. Let's just say, I remember Scott Brown was when he was playing for Hibs before he made his move to Celtic, and I tried to every time I interviewed Scott Brown for a man of the match, I always had to say, Scott, this is the hospitality lounge. There are children here. Please mind your language. And he would be like, you fucking cunt. And it would just naturally come out. So he was always entertaining. But the best thrill for me, and it wasn't necessarily for me, but it was because of my dad, and there was legends in the lounge. Pat Stanton, Laurie Riley, and Joe Baker. And Joe Baker was my dad's all-time favourite Hibs player. And they were there to just sit and host tables at the hospitality then. And so, of course, I got to know these guys. My dad gets to know these guys. And ultimately, my dad's hero, Joe Baker, is sitting having a conversation with my dad. And my dad's just going, like, completely starstruck, just, fanboying over Joe Baker. And so to me, that was the best thing and the best gift I could. It was almost like, normally you have this idea of fathers lift their wee boys over the turnstile. Well, I was lifting my dad over the turnstile, and not only letting him watch his heroes, but letting him become friends with his heroes and legends of the club. And that, for me, above anything else that I've done at Hibs, that's the one thing that gives me the most pride, that I was able to give that to my dad.
That's fantastic. That is a great story. I mean, in a modern day similar thing, I remember 30 years ago watching Ian Jess terrorise teams in the Premier League, and then I'm interviewing him for his 50th.
Wow. Yeah.
And that made me feel, and I've just turned 40, so it's incredible to think how life goes full circle like that. But you've seen some interesting Hibs teams. I mean, one in particular I'm going to highlight just now, the team that came up after relegation, because somehow he's managed to attract Russell Latipi and Frank Sosie to the club, and he's came back and he's did really well. Reached the Scottish Cup final, finished third in the league, and Sosie in particular and Latipi, just two completely different characters. And when I was speaking to John Hughes, he can't talk Russell up enough. He's just a different character in himself.
It was an unbelievable time, and again, I don't know. I think it was Alex McLeish's contacts. I don't know what it was. I don't know how it happened, but that team that he put together to get us out of the Championship, Division 1, whatever it was at the time, and into the Premier League, and to keep them together and have that season that we had after it, which unbelievable. I mean, I remember watching this team come together, like Frank Sosie, he's playing for Hibs. Yeah, and it's like you're thinking, he's going to be washed up, he's going to be done. Well, why on earth? And oh no, he was far from washed up. He was far from done. He still had the magic, the grace, the class, and could command the game from, maybe his best midfield days were behind him, but he was just sat behind them and in front of the defence, and it was just incredible to watch. And then, as you mentioned, the wee powerhouse that was Russell Latipi, having him playing, but we also had, you think of John O'Neill, who's one of my favourite Hibs players, and when you think of all the players that he was playing alongside, he doesn't perhaps get the attention that the likes of Sosie and Latipi got at that point. But for me, John O'Neill was a great player. He was a wee magician, like Latipi as well. And Lovell was in that team, who has to have Ulrich Larsson was thereabouts as well. And with just, Yogi Hughes, it was just Mixu Patalainen. It's like that era of players that we had was Dirk Lehmann. Just bonkers. Kenny Miller was playing for. It was like incredible, the players that we had at that point. And we got to the cup final. I remember going through to that, and it was one of the games that was never tipped in our favour, and it was going to have to take something incredible for us to beat Celtic, and obviously we didn't. But through that whole era, the 6-2 game for me, when we beat Hearts 6-2, was just phenomenal. I remember it was a Sunday night, and again I'm walking east the road with my dad, and it was a 6 o'clock kickoff or 7 o'clock kickoff or something, and I'm going, oh God, Dad, it's a derby. Derby's just my guts are inside out. I've got butterflies and all that. What's this going to be like? I says, I tell you what, I would take a 1-1 right now. I'd take a 1-1 right now. And of course, Hearts scores first. I don't know if it was Stevie Fulton or whoever it was.
It was Andy Kirk scored. Andy Kirk scored.
And so Hearts score first. And I'm like, oh, here we go. And I remember putting my head in my hands, and I just looked up, and where our seats were positioned were kind of midway between the goal and the halfway line. And directly in my eyesight, in my eye line, was Russell Latipi. And he was looking around him, and it was almost as if he was going, it's all right, boys. It's okay. This is all part of the plan. Remain calm. Going to be fine. And I just got a wee inner confidence from him, because normally when Hibs and Hearts are playing and Hearts score, the heads go down. Not just the fans, but you often felt the players did as well. So here we go again. But not this time, and not that night. And Russell Latipi, almost like you felt like, I've seen the video, I know how this ends up, right? And this is going to be great. And of course, right enough, we got a couple of goals before half time from Mixu, and the rest, as they say, is history. And it was just a phenomenal night, and Latipi scored a great goal that night. And it was Colin Cameron, I think, scored the second Hearts goal, and we were 6-1 up at that point. And then Hearts got the second goal. And I'll never forget, there was this guy, woo, all the Hibs fans as well. I think it's only the first time Hibs fans have ever applauded or, enjoyed Hearts scoring a goal at Easter Road. Phenomenal. But again, that was that era, that wonderful, incredible era when McLeish put those teams together and got us out of relegation, got us out of the lower league and into the Premier League. It was, and again, you just kind of go with it, don't you? You don't kind of stop and go, this is magic. Let's really just sort of stop and savour this. You kind of go for it, and then, obviously these players don't stay too long. They all move on and whatever. But, the memories that they gave us are absolutely live with you forever.
Yeah, and I've got to talk about the golden generation, Riordan, O'Connor, Gary Caldwell was in the team, David Murphy, a good left back.
David Murphy is another one of my standout all-time favourite players. David Murphy, for me, was just a player who, no matter what was going on in the game, you'd be watching the game, and then the ball would go to Murphy, and then you go, oh, that's okay, that's all right. Murphy's got the ball. He's not going to lose it, first and foremost, right? He's not going to give it away, but what he's going to do with it is he's going to place it at another Hibs player's feet. Watch this, and he had this sort of stance where he kind of stood back and he sort of dropped his hands a wee bit, looked for where he was going to get, and he would just ping the ball. And he was a good-looking bastard, David Murphy, as well. And honestly, he for me was him, John O'Neill, Ken McAllister. These are my kind of under the radar, my favourite players. I mean, they don't get the plaudits I think the higher profile players do, but Murphy's definitely up there as one of my favourite all time players for Hibs. But yeah, it was a great era of that as well. Tony Mowbray and again, I was working quite closely with the club at that point, and I was doing the lounge, so I got to know all the players, doing the Player of the Year dinner at the Hibs Supporters Club, and also for Hibs as well, and then I produced a DVD. My one and only time of producing and directing a film, if you want to call it, but I filmed the season. I did a documentary about that season, which was Tony Mowbray's first season at Hibs, and so the documentary starts with Tony Mowbray getting the job, and then because I remember that, it was one of those moments in Scottish football where nobody second guessed at Hibs at that point. It was like trying to get information from behind the Iron Curtain. Nothing got out. There was never any leaks. There was never any bits of gossip or tittle-tattle. You never guess you were going to sign. It was always last minute. It was always a secret. And I was on the radio, and Craig Patterson was our sports reporter at Forth at the time, and he was at the press conference, and the press conference was at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock in the morning, and I'm on air at that point, and we then get a message from Craig, filtered down while the news is going on at 11 o'clock, and it's like, Hibs new manager is Tony Mowbray, and I'm going, Tony Mowbray? And so the news finishes, and I went, and just because the last thing that they'd said, and we're waiting to hear confirmation of the new Hibs manager from Easter Road, and I faded up the mic and I went, I've actually got confirmation that the new manager of Hibs is Tony Mowbray. And I remember going, wow, I didn't know, because obviously I knew he played for Celtic, but I'm like, right, this is really out the norm. And funnily enough, I think it was my wife, Claire, was in a card shop in Morningside at that moment, and there was two guys behind the counter, and Claire told me the story. She goes, one of them goes, have you heard who the new Hibs manager is going to be? And the other guy goes, no. He says, it's Tony Mowbray. And the guy goes, no, it can't be him. And he goes, it is, because Grant Stott's just said it on the radio. So Claire was in the shop at the time that I'd said this, and these two were having this discussion, unbeknown to them, of course, that my wife was in there eavesdropping on their conversation. So it was a wee moment in time. So anyway, I digress. I'm off on a tangent again. But yeah, I made the documentary, and it started with Tony's arrival and his announcement at the press conference, and then how we went through the whole season. And I interviewed Scott Brown, Derek Rad, and Gary O'Connor, Stephen Whittaker, all these guys, young guys. And I remember the question was, where were you when you heard that Tony Mowbray was the new manager of Hibs? What were you doing? And so we got all that feedback and put the DVD together and sold at the club shop and everything. So I worked quite closely at the club at that point, and so I had quite a bit of access into the workings of the club and the team at that time, and it was a great period to be there. And I was on the pitch when we finally won our place in Europe.
At the expense of one goal difference, yeah. Remember that?
It was goal difference. We were waiting because we had that really. Was that the really odd random game with Rangers where nobody wanted to score,
Useless
think
1-0. We
was.
only won 2-0 because Craig Gordon was just almost unbeatable that day. I was at that game with Audrey.
And it was a nuts game because we thought, right, if we just leave it now, Rangers they'd won the league or whatever it was that they'd got. But if we just keep it at this, we're getting in Europe. So then, after the game, I'm on the pitch because I've got the camera crew with me and walking round and filming the players on the pitch with the hats on, the scarf and all that, and all the fans celebrating. And unbeknown to us, if you watch that film now, our cameraman ran along behind the goals at Easter Road, and all the Hibs fans were like, "Way!" at that game. And it's since been lifted. I didn't know at the time, obviously, but it's since been lifted. And there's a clip of a certain Lee Griffiths, who must have been about 12 at that point. And you just see Lee going, "Ah!" And he's on the clip. We get a really good close-up of him. So maybe that was Lee Griffiths' Hibs TV DVD debut. I don't know. But yeah, that was a great experience, man. And a great season. Remarkable from where we were to where we ended up. It was fantastic.
Yeah, it was obviously a lot of those players ended up moving on. But whilst they were all together at Hibs for those couple of seasons, do you think Hibs should have done more? And what I mean by that is the semi-final against Dundee United in the Scottish Cup was an absolute throwaway. You dominated that game. You only took the Luther Debt Ryan penalty, and then you just absolutely blew it. And I think at that point, over those couple of seasons, there's obviously the Hearts game the following season as well, but I think that team could have achieved more before they started breaking up.
Yeah, but there was also a lot of these players had come through, and a lot of these, it was a very inexperienced side at that point, and playing at that level where you needed to have a certain mentality, and that's why these players are probably better players now, because they've had these experiences with Hibs at Hampden, and they've gone on to say, right, that's not going to happen against Scott Brown, Stephen Whittaker and all that, and they've used that experience to become better players. But at the time, they were so young, and you think how many of them had come through the academy and how they were just boys, it's remarkable to think Scott Brown's still playing now, and he was there in the early 2000s when this team was getting put together, just boys, just kids. We've had, but hasn't every team, had a glorious opportunity. There we were again, just before Christmas with a semi-final against Hearts, then we had another semi-final against St Johnstone, and we never turned up on those two games either. And probably the most disappointing game was against St Johnstone, because they absolutely battered us. They had us, had the measure of us from the first kick-off to the final whistle.
Did Colin rub it into you?
I got a couple of pictures. He sent me a couple of photographs and a couple of tweets and all that. But he's not the worst, let's just say, at getting it right up you when the teams when your team goes down against the opposition. But but I mean that was So it happens. It happens in every team and every. Look at Rangers this season. They've absolutely flying, but then they get a scene to St Mirren, and we love that. But there's no excuse for that. There's no rhyme or reason. Especially Rangers wanting to win silverware this season, should have taken and put that game to bed. But is it because just an off day or so? There are times in every team that things go wrong, and Hibs have had a few.
Yes, well, you know why they have you have the term Hibs it, but you didn't Hibs it in 2016. 114 years. I mean, you've obviously. I mean, when you go through the pain of certain cup finals, we also mentioned the Celtic one. That was a hard one. The Hearts one in particular is a difficult one to get over. And then all that's washed away when David Gray sails through the air and heads home from Liam Henderson's corner. Just describe the scenes at Hampden that day. And were you on the pitch?
No, wasn't on the pitch. Standing beside my dad, watching him take it in, and yeah, you're absolutely right. Everything that had gone before completely went out the window, and I would never say it was worth not winning a cup for 114 years, but because we hadn't won for 114 years, I don't think they'll ever, I don't think any football fan alive, other than the Hibs fans that were there that day or around the world watching it, will ever know what that feeling is like. And even there was St Johnstone won the League Cup for the first time, so many years after winning the Scottish Cup for the first time. But it's I still don't think it meant as much as it did for the Hibs fans, because it was the holy grail. It was the one thing that people had lived and died and never seen it. My granddad lived and died and never saw Hibs win the Scottish Cup. My dad, by this point, was 76. He basically thought, I'm never going to see Hibs win the Scottish Cup. And we got to the final that particular year. And what I do remember about that year, and I was hosting the hospitality, we took out one of the big suites at Parkhead, but took about 500 Hibs fans through there, and I hosted the pre-match hospitality. We had Pat Stanton there, we had Alec Cropley was there, Stuart Lovell was there, and so I was emceeing and interviewing everybody and going along. And I remember speaking to Stuart Lovell before the game and going, when you think of all the other Scottish Cup finals, and when we talk about it with Celtic, we'd never had a chance to win that one, because Celtic were, so far ahead of us. We were never on an even playing field.
Terrible winning Celtic team with Larson up front.
Yeah, they were massive, right? They were runaway favourites and rightly won it that year. Hearts, the year we played, we were shattered as a team. We had injuries ravaged right through us, and they had, for however many different complicated reasons, amassed a set of players, expensive players, and let's just say perhaps spent out with their means at that point. And I think, history proves that perhaps they did. And so, it wasn't a level playing field from that point. So we were really going to always have to play above our game. That day in 2016, we'd already beaten Rangers that season comfortably. So we knew we were capable of winning that game. And I said, all we needed to do, we didn't need luck. We didn't need to raise our game. All we needed to do was play Rangers at their game, as we have done in the past, and just do what we've done before, and that was beat them. And that's what we did. We played them and we beat them, okay, in dramatic fashion. And I always did say, I did believe Hibs would win the Scottish Cup in my lifetime. And I always said, whatever it's going to be, it's going to be dramatic. It's going to be, sort of stuff of movies. And it was, you watch that whole road to getting there, the Hearts 2-0 down at half time. We come back to draw 2-2 at Tynecastle. We win 1-0 at Easter Road in the replay. We got a penalty shootout with Conrad Logan against Dundee United. This bizarre random experience of this guy that nobody knew or heard of walks on the pitch at Hampden. We're all going, who's that? When's he? He's not played for 2.5 years or whatever it was. That's the game of his life. It's Roy the Rovers. We're through at the final. We've got Rangers. Rangers get Celtic in the other semi-final. They're desperate to beat Celtic. They've not played Celtic for years. They've not beat Celtic for years. They beat them. And I think that they couldn't raise their game again. They couldn't raise their game to the level that they did. I think beating Celtic in the semi-final was perhaps more important than beating Hibs in the final, I think, mentally. And I think it kind of the stars aligned for us that year. And it was the most magnificent day of my life, outside of my, obviously, children and wedding and all that. And it's a day that, if we win it again, and I think we could win it again. We were so close. We got the semi-final there with Hearts, and I think we could have given Celtic a game had we got to the final. But I think we could win it again in my lifetime. But will it be as good as 21st of May 2016? I don't think so.
Probably not. I mean, my first Scottish Cup memory was winning it in 1990. I was 9 years old. I thought, this will come again. Still waiting 31 years later. So
that's it. That was like me with my Scottish Cup, my League Cup and Skull Cup, in 91 when I went. I'm like, this is great. My first year following Hibs. We win a cup. Brilliant. But football doesn't often pan out that way. But
well, you've got that nice little Scottish Cup replica that you were showing just for people who weren't. This is a audio only podcast, so better.
Sorry about that. Right, okay.
I could put it on YouTube actually, because we are starting to do that. If you don't mind, I might put it on there.
Okay.
So, also in your football lifetime, you managed to present football for 2 years. One of the last presenters of the flagship programme Scott Sport, which ran for 50 years, you and Andy Walker. So through the last couple of years, just how was that experience being able to present a programme like that and follow in the footsteps of likes of Jim Delhan, Jim White, etc.?
Well, it was a great honour, right? First and foremost, to be associated with that programme. The Guinness Book of Records had it in as the longest running sports programme in the world at that point. 50 years we got to. And again, because if you think, I didn't follow football. I didn't play football as a kid. I didn't play football in any capacity when I was growing up. I only started watching football in 1990. So it was a great it was a source of great humour in my house and in my family when they went, "You're going to present Scott Sport. What do you know about football?" But part of the reason I think I got the job was Jim Delahunt had left to go to Setanta.
Yes.
And kind of left them not high and dry, but yeah, they had to quickly find a remedy for this situation. So I phoned Henry Eagles, who was the exec producer at STV for Scott Sport, and I'd hummed and hawed about it for the reason I just said. It's like, could I do this? Could I do this? Anyway, so I phoned them up, and I said, "Henry, it's Grant Stott here." I went, "Oh, hello." He says, "I'm just wondering," he says, "if you've found a presenter for Scott Sport, or is it too late for me to throw my hat into the ring?" He says, "We're making a decision this week. You've timed it just right. Can you come through to Glasgow tomorrow?" So I went through to Glasgow to PQ to STV and met Henry and Andrea, who was the producer as well. And I said, "Look, I'm going to put my cards on the table. I'm going to be brutally honest here. My technical knowledge and my tactical knowledge of the game is zero. Never kicked a ball in anger. I don't know anything about how you structure a 4-4-2 or a 4-3-1 or whatever it is, or how the offside rule particularly works." I says, "But I can talk about a game because I'm a fan." I says, and at that point, I've been interviewing players every week at Hibs, pre-match, post-match. So you begin to get a bit of an understanding. And because I was interviewing players, I would watch the game differently. I would always look for a talking point. I would have a wee opinion about, well, what was that point there? Why did you get a foul there? Why didn't you know? So I kind of had a different habit of watching matches by that point. So they then said, "Well, look, we've got Andy Walker, who is a pundit on the show, but he fancies presenting, but he's got no presenting experience." I says, "Well, I've got plenty of presenting experience, but very little tactical football knowledge." She said, "Well, Andy's got all the tactical football knowledge. Let's bring the two of you together." So the following week, I was back through again, and we did a pilot with just me and Andy, sort of an audition, really, I guess. So I met Andy for the first time. We're straight into the studio. They put in a dummy guest. We show some clips of a match, and we just chat about what we've seen, what we've watched, did a few links, and then they went, "Right, we like this. Let's go." And that's how it came about. And to this day, it's one of my biggest regrets is that STV gave up the rights in the way that they did, because the BBC came back in having not had the TV rights for a number of years. They came in quite heavy, got the TV rights off the SPFL, and got exclusive rights at that point. So STV were out the window, and they had no money. They didn't have the money to spend big. So that was that. It was the end of Scott Sport, the end of 50 years, and the end of Andy and I's partnership. And that's what I regret, because I just felt, we kind of came in midway through the first season after Jim left. So we got about 6 months, and then came back and we did the full second season. And by that time, we were beginning to really get to know each other and work with each other. And Andy's, I like Andy a lot. That was for me, that was the most positive thing of doing Scott Sport. I got a genuine friend in Andy Walker, and he's a lovely guy. He's got a brilliant, dry sense of humour, and he's very sharp. And he's got, and at the end of the day, and he bought into it, because at the end of the day, we're putting a TV show together, right? TV has got to be entertaining, and it's got to provoke thought and discussion and debate. So Andy knew what his role was, and we would sit there in the afternoon looking at the football highlights, and he goes, "You know what I'm going to say? I'm going to say this." And he would work out quite a controversial statement about a manager or about a player or something like that. And he was going to direct it at one of our pundits, because he knew that would upset the fans or get the fans going, or something like that. So he knows what he's doing, and Andy is a controversial figure in football, but he knows the game, right? Andy's been there, done it, got the t-shirt, bought the album, the whole lot. So he knows what he's talking about inside and out, but he also gets the TV business side of it as well. And there was a couple of experiences with certain individuals that came on the show, and they didn't get it was TV, and they sometimes thought, if I was maybe having a wee pop, if it was a Hearts pundit or something like that, they would get quite upset about it. And it's like, I'm not meaning to upset you. I'm not meaning to wind anybody up. It's just about the football. It's just about, let's make this a really entertaining on-screen discussion, and some people got it, others didn't. Andy definitely did, and Andy still does, and that's why I loved working with him. And I learned a lot from him about the game. I learned a lot about football, and so it was terrific. I only wish it lasted longer.
Yeah, it was just a shame because at that point, Satanta, before they went bust, had pretty much all the highlights. BBC, I think, were starting to show them online, and this was before Scott Sport was then showing on the Sunday night or the Monday, whenever it was. And by that
the Monday night, about 11 o'clock or something, we'd go on after the news.
Yeah, but that's him. The games have already been shown, and I think that probably helped kill Scott Sport. To be fair, and then, as you said, STV at that point went into financial meltdown for a couple of years. Like Taggart get cancelled eventually and stuff like that. It was a dark period for the station, unfortunately.
It was, and it's I worked at STV in 1993 when I first did Weemsby, and that's when they were at Cowcaddens. And I remember it was like amazing. I remember walking through Cowcaddens, and you'd walk past somebody that was in Taggart, and then they were filming High Road. They'd film High Road in our studio, on the main studio one in Glasgow. So when we did Weemsby, they would put some of the set for High Road away and build our set. So we were on one side of the studio, and then High Road was on the other. So you'd be sitting in Isabel's shop, between scenes or between bits of businesses that you were doing. So that was going on. Funhouse was getting filmed. Disney Club was going on in Edinburgh, and there was stuff going on all the time, and it was a buzz. And it was walking about the corridors in Cowcaddens for STV was so exciting. And I'm just so glad that I was there. Compared to sadly what it is now, it's a much smaller operation. It's all open plan offices, a couple of wee tiny studios, and it's a different world in time. Same with the BBC, of course.
Yeah, of course. It's definitely a different world that we're in. But you're obviously doing well with yourself at the BBC. Just before I go into the quick fire questions, as we call them, slow fire, because it takes a while to get through them. Grant Campbell asked this question. He wants you to dish out some good Tam Cowan stories, get one back on your old pal.
Well, Tam's a top bloke, and I've worked with Tam and known Tam since the mid-90s, since I was doing Fully Booked for the BBC, which was this sort of big kids Saturday, Sunday programme that filled in for Live and Kicking. And because I was in the BBC and they knew I was a Hibs fan, Stuart Cosgrove went off and then says, "Grant, do you want to come and cover Off the Ball?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, that's good. Oh God, I'm going to have to be funny. I'm going to have to know my football again, So I went, "Oh yeah, I would love to do that." So I remember the first time I went in, and it was at Queen Margaret Drive at the BBC studios. This is Tam Cowan, and I'm like, "Hello, Tam." He's like, "All right, okay, this is a good warm start." And so we get into the studio. We got our scripts and everything, and I've been spending that week going, right, I've got a couple of wee funnies, I'll maybe go, "Oh, and if you'd seen Hibs, then that would be that. And then I wrote down another way, right, so I had a couple of wee funnies up my sleeve. And so we get into the do show, and of course I'm reading the script, holding the show together. Tam's there to do what Tam does brilliantly. And then I thought, right, this is my time, crack will be funny. And then, of course, Tam, if you'd seen Hibs, and told my joke, and he sat like that. Stony silence. Not a thing, just anyway. All right, okay. And then carried on, right? I'm dying on my arse, right, in front of Tam. He's not helping me at all. He's not cracking a smile. And so by the end of the show, I'm like, oh, that's it. I'm never going to get asked back again. I'll never get asked back again. It's like, he hates me. The guy can't stand me. For some reason, he just doesn't like me. So I walked away. And then 2 weeks later, my agent phones up again. "Oh, the BBC have been in touch. They want you to cover Off the Ball again." I'm like, "You kidding me? This is Tam Cowan here." No, Tam loved you. No, they want you back. So I went back and I'm like, "I'm so surprised to be here." And Tam goes, "Why?" He says, "I thought we got on great." I goes, "We did, but you didn't laugh at any of my jokes or anything." He goes, "Oh, I didn't laugh at anybody's jokes except my own." So that was a little lesson learned about how to work with Tam. But I've worked with him loads of times at sporting dinners, and I've been on Off the Ball on a couple of occasions with him and Stuart, and they're just great pals, and yeah, we're in touch quite a lot, text and stuff over the football season mostly. But okay, Tam's, and I wouldn't say a bad word against him.
No, I wouldn't have thought so. But yeah, he's
certainly
an iconic
on the show.
He's an iconic figure, obviously.
Yes.
I think where he's consistent is he can't stand either the Old Firm, and a lot of the Old Firm fans don't like him for that.
That's the secret. That is the secret that shows success. You got Tam Cowan there, a Motherwell fan, Stuart Cosgrove, a big St Johnstone fan, and both polar opposites with regards to individuals, but yet clearly big pals who love their own teams. And you can never accuse them of any form of Old Firm bias, and that's what was groundbreaking at the time, to come out of the BBC to put on a programme that was so anti the Old Firm, if you like. It was taking the mickey out of Celtic, taking the mickey out of Rangers. It never been done before. So that was it, and they've stuck to that, and I think that's been a key ingredient in the success of Off the Ball, and groundbreaking stuff, really is.
Yeah, definitely. It was definitely refreshing at the time, and it's still welcome now these days. So, as we mentioned before we came on the show, we've got a predictions game against Alan Graham for the lower leagues. He's currently 8-5 up. So, you've kindly said that you would represent us. So, 3 championship games, because although League 1 and League 2 are back this week, it's maybe difficult to gauge form when they've not played for 3 months. So we'll go stick with 3 championship games on Saturday. So first of all, Arbroath versus Hearts. We know who you want to win, but what do you think the score's going to be?
It's been an interesting season for Hearts, hasn't it? Because I think there was this great idea that they were going to absolutely romp the league. And as much as they haven't quite romped it, they've certainly been pretty convincing with regards to the results. Performances, perhaps not so much. They've
been quite average in my opinion, but they're still romping it.
But they're still romping it, and that's unfortunate, because I kind of thought, because when we were down in the Championship, and the Championship had this sort of reputation, Dundee United found this out, that once you were down there, getting out is not easy. It was tricky. It was a tricky league to get out, and I think a lot of Hibs fans certainly were thinking that was going to be the case for Hearts, but it's proven not to be, and you can't argue with that. Yeah, they're going to win the league. Perhaps not as convincing as a lot of their fans would have had you believe at the start of the season, and I think it has been a bit of a rough ride for them, and they're perhaps not as ready for the Premier League as they might think. So I think there's still got to be work done for them before they play in the Premier League next season. But yeah, it's a given that they're going to win the league. Will they get? I mean, again, they can slip up against any side in that division. But I think the way they are at the moment, they'll beat Arbroath. But not. I don't think they've beaten anyone really all that convincingly since the start of the season. I think they beat Dundee 5-0 or something. I've not been watching too closely, you understand. But I would say 2-1 Hearts against Arbroath. I would say so.
Yeah. Dunfermline currently in second place against Inverness Calithus, who beat Raith Rovers last night as we speak. What's your prediction for that one?
Again, I was expecting more from both Dunfermline and Inverness this season. And Raith Rovers too. I'd like to have seen that more of an interesting pagger for the Championship. But Dunfermline and Inverness, I could see that being a lame 0-0 or 1-1. I don't think it'll be a goals fest.
Yeah. What are you going with, 1-1 or 0-0?
I'm more confident in Dunfermline scoring, so go 1-1.
Okay. And Morton, who are currently 8th in the league against Queen of South, have been in good form apart from last weekend we lost to Alloa.
Queen of South have been good over the last few years. Stephen Dobbie, I think, has been there. Legendary.
He's not scored as much this season.
Not scored as much this season, but there was a time it was like getting back at Hibs. I remember when he was at Hibs. Back in that era of young players, and it's incredible what he was doing at that age. But yeah, as you say, Queen of the South have been decent. Great at Morton, yeah. So I would say maybe now's the time for Stephen Dobbie to start scoring goals. So let's give him a hat trick, and Queen of the South beat Greenock Morton 3-0.
Oh, interesting that way. If that comes up, Grant, we will certainly owe you one when slot time's over. So end with the what we call the slow fire questions. So who's your favourite Panto co-star? You can name one if you're more comfortable with that.
Well, I would have to say my big pal Andy Gray, who we lost at the start of this year, and Alan Stewart, to be part of such a magic team is irreplaceable, and it's that I mean it's it's an experience that I never expected, but and I don't think any of us expected that this sort of partnership to come. It grew organically in front of the audience, and the producers just kept having us back because basically we were having so much fun off stage in the pub and going out that began to spill on stage, and our friendship and our love for each other just kind of grew, and the audience really took to that, and that was the key to our success, and that's why I think it became as popular as it did. So yeah, it's got to be my partnership with Alan and Andy, and I've been very lucky. I've worked with so many great names, from legends of the British business world like Christopher Biggins. I worked my first panto with him. I did 2 years with Cannon and Ball. I worked with Elaine C. Smith. I worked with the brilliant Gerard Kelly, who was Buttons personified. He could create mayhem and magic, and on stage and off, and the audience loved him. So yeah, I've been very fortunate with the people that I've learned off, because effectively, as I say, I didn't train to go to drama college, so I had to learn my stagecraft and learn my way around a stage by basically just doing it. And so I learned off all these people and all these wonderful performers. But yeah, at the top, I mean, my relationship with Alan Stewart and Andy Gray is one to be cherished.
Gerard Kelly, another one that didn't really like football, for what I know, but he's well known for playing the Catholic who signed for Celtic. Signed for Rangers, sorry, signed for Rangers. Yeah,
he was a Catholic. Yeah, he never made the second half because he was at mass.
Yes. After scoring 7 goals in the first half.
That's right. How did you not score any of the set? Were you injured? No, I was away at mass. Kelly was brilliant, and he was obviously loved up here for all his comedy and his comedic performances in Panto and Scotch and Rye and City Lights and everything like that. But he was also a brilliant villain in Panto and Soap, I beg your pardon, and in Brookside particularly. I know he was a villain in EastEnders as well, but he was a brilliant baddie in Brookside. And then, of course, working with Ricky Gervais in Extras as Bunny, the pantomime director, and all that wonderful sketch they ended up doing with George Michael on, I think it was Hampstead Heath. Kelly was just irreplaceable, just fantastic. Yeah. And another one we've just lost too soon.
Exactly. And out of the villains that you've played, what's your favourite one?
I think it would be Hibernia. She's my favourite. She was, that was because that was the role I really, really wanted to play, was the wicked stepmother, and I'd done Cinderella a few times over the years up until that point, but never got that role. I'd been an ugly sister, I'd been Dandini, and done the various parts in Cinderella, but when I got to be the wicked stepmother, because I think she's probably the worst villain in all of Panto. She's not magic, she's not got powers, but she's just bad. And also because she's meant to be Cinderella's stepmother, who's meant to be looking after her, but actually she makes Cinderella's life hell. And it's that whole thing of marrying into a family and treating one of the kids badly, and when you get that scene right, when you tear up the ticket for the ball for Cinderella, you can feel the venom from the audience, and I love it.
Maybe she'll make an appearance at Easter Road. Who knows?
Who knows? I've still got high heels.
Yeah. If you were to play a former player or manager, or current player or manager at Hibs, who would it be and why?
Former player or manager, current player or manager, who would it be? Think. Who could I be manager? I would love to have a go at being Eddie Turnbull, actually. Eddie Turnbull. Again, talk about the Pantomime Villain. As much as Eddie was a hard man, and ran that club with a rod of iron. So if there was ever a film about Hibs, or if ever a film about Eddie Turnbull, to play him, because he was a hard man. That'd be good. Eddie Turnbull. Give me Eddie.
That's a good shout. That. What's your favourite tipple?
White wine. A nice glass of white wine. Probably a bit too much of that over lockdown, hence the excess pounds. But I love a glass of white wine. Prosecco as well. Inherited that from Andy Gray. Yeah. I miss my beers. I miss a pint. I don't drink as much beer as I used to. I miss a good pint. And if I was to drink a spirit, it would be a vodka. But I'm steaming already just thinking about it. But yeah, my favourite tipple would be a lovely cold glass of white wine.
Yeah, I think I've asked this question in reverse, because what I should have asked first was, what's your death row meal? because that's white wine's
Death
obviously
row meal.
accompanying this.
Yeah, I think if you ask that to any one of my mates or anyone who knows me, I would say it would be a Chinese. I could eat Chinese 6-7 days a week. Never get enough of it. And it's always like, what we get for carry, Dad? Could we get... And they just know I'm going to say Chinese, so they always try and get in first. All my mates, I'm addicted to spare ribs. Can't get enough of spare. I love spare ribs. I love all the starters that you can get, and going to a good Chinese is just my idea of heaven. So yeah, if I was on death row for being a naughty boy, give me some spare ribs and a special chow mein, and I'd be happy.
That sounds good, actually. And we like our pie chat on the podcast. What's your favourite pie?
Fun enough, I just had a pie tonight for my tea, a chicken and ham pie.
Chicken ham, really?
Chicken and ham, yeah. The store down the road from me does these nice fresh butcher's pies. I love a pie. But particularly at the football, I think there's just something about that whole experience of the pie at half time. And even it's funny, because when I worked in hospitality, you would generally get a lunch before the game, so you'd have a lunch, and then you come and go, oh, a pie. And my dad would go, oh, I can't eat another pie. He says, I had that lunch. I'd often have his. So no, I love a good pie at the football. Brown sauce, all the way around the crust, and then stuff it in the gub. Fantastic.
See, I'd be putting ketchup in mine. So
ketchup,
yes.
Ketchup on a pie, steak pie.
Mm.
Oh, no.
Not a steak pie, mince pie for me.
A mince pie. Yeah, I like a good Scotch pie. I tell you, a real treat takes me right back. Takes me right back to my childhood. Is a Scotch pie, chips and beans. That was heaven on a plate. We used to get the Commonwealth pool. You go swimming, and if you had enough money, we'd go up to the canteen afterwards, and from behind the counter, a Scotch pie, chips and beans all over the pie. Even now, beans all over the pie on the top. Fantastic. Can't beat it.
Sounds good. I tell you something, not only will pie companies be happy when the football restarts, so will Bovril, because you very rarely see people buying Bovril what you drink in the house.
No.
They must be getting...
But again, I enjoy a Bovril at the match. And it is that kind of, it's the only time I ever drink Bovril is at the football. They'll be delighted as well, I'm quite sure.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of pantomime villains, when you're at the football, who's the biggest for you?
It's funny. Trying to think who would. Jim Goodwin. Jim Goodwin used to noise me up and wind me up whenever Hibs played St Mirren. He was always one of these players, and it's an interesting one. Talk about transformation, because he on the football pitch he would go in hard and going for the dirty tackles and always nick, and always giving it a bit of that. But now that he's a manager of St Mirren, one eloquent, well-groomed, bloody, again, a handsome bugger he is as well, and fit guy. But, to go from that terrier on the park, I always used to get really wound up when Jim Goodwin was playing. He always used to take out, Scott Brown or whoever it was playing for us at the time. He would always take him out. He was a dirty bastard. But what a lovely bloke, and I think he's doing a great job at St Mirren. So it just shows you how people are on the pitch. And how they are on the pitch.
Exactly. And I'd take him as Aberdeen manager, but whether that'll happen is another thing.
It's going to be interesting, isn't it? Yeah, because it's funny, he had a tough start, Jim Goodwin. I think when we played him at Easter Road, Paul Heckingbottom had just started, and we'd given him I think we'd beat them only just or something. Anyway, and they went on a really tricky run. I thought, it's not going to work out well for Jim, but he's really turned it around this season. Yeah, I think he's done a really good job, and so it's interesting, and it's not surprising that he's getting mentioned for the Aberdeen contender. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I don't think we will get him because he signed a new contract, and we're paying off McInnes, and probably won't be able to pay for compensation for him. But we'll wait and see.
You've always found money for players when they were just about to sign for Hibs. So did he start this? Oh, we probably can't afford them. Nonsense. What we could do is we could start a rumour that Jim Goodwin is going to sign for Hibs, and then miraculously Aberdeen will find the money and sign him. So and then we just stay with Stay with Jack Ross, which will be fine.
Listen, you can have Ojo in the summer if you want.
No. You're fine.
I
We
think
didn't
you
get any
also
Ojo. So one went to Rangers, one went to Aberdeen, and quite happy about that. Thank you very much.
Fair enough. So in terms of your favourite player at Hibs, who would you say your favourite player was?
Oh, that is impossible to answer. But yeah, I'm going to say, one of the non-obvious ones, because most Hibs fans would easily go for a Sozzy or Riordan or O'Connor or Pat Stanton or Laurie Riley or Joe Baker, all these big fantastic players. But I genuinely, it is a three-way tie. I've been thinking about it. It would be a sort of David Murphy, a Kevin McAllister, who I just loved when he played for Hibs. I know he was a big legend at Falkirk, but I think we kind of got the best of him the short time that he was at Hibs. He was brilliant for us. And John O'Neill as well. I loved John O'Neill playing for Hibs. Can I only get one, or can I have...
You can go with the two if you can't separate them.
Right, let me go for Crunchy, because he's been a long time favourite of mine, and I wrote in his testimonial programme at Falkirk how much I loved him as a player. And David Murphy, I think, was just class. Yeah. Class personified for me, yeah.
Exactly. Before I get your best Hibs 11, I need to ask this question. So if you were to have a five-a-side team of fellow actors, who would be in it?
As in actors who can play football?
Well, attempt to play football.
Actors who play football? God. Who have we got then? Dougray Scott. Big Hibs fan. I would have Irvin Welsh. Nobody would tackle Irvin Welsh. Nobody would go anywhere near Irvin Welsh. So they'd be in my side. I'd get Fish. He'd go and go.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I would, how many is that? What did you see? Andy Murray, because he would just his fitness levels would be absolutely phenomenal. And the Proclaimers. That's my fifth player.
Your fifth player to make it. Well, call it a six-a-side team since you've got the two of them in. And are you just being the manager on the sidelines?
Yeah, my time on the pitch. Yeah, it's not worth talking about. So yeah, I would leave it to the guys that know their way around the park.
Yeah. Have you ever played for Hibs in like a charity game or anything like that?
Yes, and that's why I would say I would never go back on again. I remember getting asked to go in goals for a competition for a half-time penalty shootout with competition winners. So there was 5 competition winners who'd entered this thing in the Daily Record to play at half-time, funnily enough, against Aberdeen at Easter Road. And so I went in goals, and I actually went to all the trouble of going to, and I even asked if I could go and train with the Hibs goalkeepers, which I did. And I had a couple of, I had a morning with the Hibs goalies. I think Jim Layton was in goal for us at that point. Anyway, and so the Saturday comes, and these 5 guys come along to take penalties against me. And of course, they're doing it, they're seriously, they don't want, they're not doing it as a laugh. They want to score each penalty. And of course, everyone is on target, and everyone's in the back of the net. I don't get near a shot, right? And this is going on and going on and going on. Of course, it's meant to be a knockout. Whoever misses gets out. None of them were missing. They were all going in. I wasn't saving any of them. They were all going in. And I'll never forget, it was at one point, I went the right way. I went down to my left, and I saw the ball just go, and I went, it's going to hit the post. And it did hit the post. And I went, yeah, beauty. And it hit the post, came back, smacked me in the puss, and then went in the net. I still couldn't save it. And when my hands are here, and it hits me in the face and goes in the back of the net. And I remember looking over the tunnel, and Hibs and Aberdeen are standing in the tunnel waiting to come out. And I'm going, I'm sorry. I got booed off. I got booed off by the Hibs fans. I was that bad. And it's still my dad, who was in the stand watching, he was a great player in his day. He was a goalkeeper for Edinburgh and Edinburgh schools and everything like that, played for the army. And he was standing, he was just absolutely mortified. I brought shame on the Stott goalkeeping legacy that my dad had passed down to me. But no, yeah, that was the only time. And I'd done a couple of fun things, family fun days and everything, but no. Oh, there was a Meadowbank game as well. No, rotten. Played for Scotland against England at Wembley. Rod Stewart was the captain. That was a brilliant night. We beat England 3-2. And
yes,
Nigel Benn was on their side, and it was a big boxer, Ainsley. Not Ainsley Harriott, he's the cook, isn't he? Ainsley.
Other
big boxer.
Audley Harrison.
Audley Harrison. Why am I saying Ainsley? Audley Harrison. Ainsley. And I'm standing in the tunnel at Wembley.
Ainsley
Got
might
the
be
Scotland kit on. Standing in the tunnel at Wembley, got the Scotland kit on. Audley Harrison is standing next to me, right? He's about 7 foot tall. And I went, "Oh, big man." And he looked at me and I went, "You're getting it." And then I ran all the way, all the way out the tunnel. But luckily enough, I took Nigel Benn out in the penalty box. Blatant penalty. Hacked him down. Beauty. And the referee never gave it. And we went on to win. And my good friend Mark Finlay, who's a big Aberdeen fan, used to work on North Sound Radio. He played with us that night and he scored about 2 wonder goals. It was brilliant. Bobby Bluebell was playing with us with Justin Curry and Dougie Vipond was there. We had Brian McFadden from Westlife. He joined us because...
Is he playing an England-Scotland game?
But Kerry Katona and Natasha from Atomic Kitten, they were playing for England. He was going out with Kerry at the time. So he played for us. But yeah, it was nuts. An absolutely bonkers, drunken night. Bobby Murdoch was our coach for Celtic. And yeah, it was crazy night. But yeah, but I was a dreadful, dreadful, dreadful footballer. But I managed to have a couple of jammy experiences in my time.
That's good. But well, at least we know where the curse of the Hibs goalkeeper started. So,
well, we've had no bad goalkeepers over the years.
Yeah, I mean,
Jim Leighton,
but after Gorham and Leighton, it sort of went downhill for a bit. But that's a high.
We experimented.
Marciano's good.
Marciano's been decent. Yeah, he's been very decent, and I think we've seen him. He'll be away in the summer, I think. But we've had a good run with him. Conrad Logan as well. Women's superhero, goalkeeper, brilliant. Unbelievable stuff. But,
Roy the Rover stuff. So,
right,
we'll get you into naming your best Hibs 11 of your lifetime and manager.
Right. Well, this is interesting. So I've gone for 4-4-2, right? Mm-hmm. 4 defenders, 4 midfield. They may not play in this particular, but however, this is the ones I've gone for. In goal, I'm going for Budgie, right? John Burridge was utterly bonkers, but what a personality! And like, I think looking at my team, you'll get why I love football so much, right? When what makes me excited about football, I love being entertained, right? And I love, and that goes to what I do on stage and on the radio and things. And football can be brilliant and entertaining as well. And sometimes when you get the right characters in a team, you can be entertained and you can be off your seat. So Budgie would bring that to a game. He would do something absolutely bonkers before the match, or you'd hear stories about him having his wife throwing oranges at him while watching his film on a Saturday night without telling him, catch! And so just to keep him sharp, So Budgie and goal. As I mentioned, in my back 4, I would go for David Murphy, one of my favourite players. I'd stick Yogi Hughes in there because he's just Hibs through and through. Mm-hmm. And he is an absolute character and, Leith boy. Yes. As is Darren McGregor. I've gone for Darren McGregor as well because I think he sort of personifies Hibs. He was, it was brilliant for us that season that we won the cup, and I was lucky enough to be back at Easter Road when we, after the match, and the team came back in, and he came straight up to me, and goes, "What about that big man?" I was like, "Fuck it." So Darren McGregor for me, just he's Hibs through and through, and I love the fact that he's kind of made a wee resurgence this season, and he's still playing and still doing what he does. Big Daz. Didn't mess with him. And I'm also going to chuck in Lewis Stevenson at the back as well, just because he's won both League and Scottish Cup. He's the only Hibs player to have ever done that. He's a wonderful professional, and I think he's going to do great things for Josh Doig, who's under his wing at the moment. And when Hibs beat Hearts 2-0 at Tynecastle a couple of seasons ago, Lewis Stevenson gave me and my pal a lift to the pub after the match.
Lovely. Which
just shows you how class he is. When others, you beat Hearts in a derby, what do? You give some big idiot and his pal a lift up to Tollcross to the pub. So Lewis Stevenson, hero in my eyes. My midfield would be John O'Neill and Kevin McAllister on either wing. I don't know if that would cause conflict between their favourite positions, but both of them running up and down the wing causing chaos would be brilliant. In the middle, we'd have Latipi, causing chaos, and kind of stuck between at the back of the midfield, helping out the defence as he did brilliantly with Frank Soze. So he would be there. And up front, difficult decision. Such a difficult
quality to pick from.
So much quality to pick from. I remember Darren Jackson signing for Hibs. I was so excited about that, and He had a barren spell. It went about 5 or 6 games before he could score a goal. We got the best out of Darren Jackson, I think, as well. I think his first goal for Hibs was...
His best form for
against
Scotland was coincided with that period at Hibs.
Yeah, he was brilliant when he played for us. But he's not there. So the two that I've gone for, again, Hibs through and through, much excitement, brilliant player, super guy, is Keith Wright. I would put him up because he was just a goal machine. And, you know, again, we got him at the right time, signed for Hibs, Hibs fan, got him from Dundee. He was prolific with Dundee, and he just came, he scored every round in that cup run when we won the League Cup at Hampden. So you see, he would have to be in there. And to play alongside Keith Wright, I know I'm going to come off this chat and go, oh, what about him? Oh, what about him? What about him? So many great strikers, goal scorers at Hibs. Andy Walker. But no, I'm not going to choose him. I would probably go with Derek Riordan. Again, for entertainment. You know, when Derek Riordan was playing when he was on form, again, we got the best out of him when he played at Hibs. He was a wonderful, you know, scorer of, you know, from a dead ball, from with left, right foot header. You know, he would score goals just for fun when he was at Hibs. And him and Keith Wright up front on their day. Oof, what a pairing that would be. So yeah, I think that would be my Hibs 11.
Yeah, and who's the manager?
Who is the manager? Interesting, because
it's not Terry Butcher, I take it.
Not Terry Butcher, funnily enough. No, that wasn't the first name that sprung to mind. But you know, you could go back to, although it's got to be in my lifetime. So Eddie Turnbull was the manager in my lifetime. Pat Stanton was the manager in my lifetime. We also had Alec Miller, of course, and then we went on an interesting run with the likes of Bobby Williamson and Tony Mowbray and John Collins, of course, Yogi. But you know what? I think I would just have Alan Stubbs, because he brought us the cup home, and you know, his time at Hibs, although, you know, we lost the playoff game with Falkirk, we lost the League Cup final to Ross County, big games. But again, I think the fact that we got beat at Hampden, Falkirk knocked us out in the playoffs, so we stayed in the championship. And I think that set us up for that. You know, that's the way I'm looking upon it anyway. That set us up for that. Because if we had gone that run of potentially winning the league or getting promotion, potentially winning the league and Scottish Cup double and coming away with nothing, that would have been just horrendous. But getting that Scottish Cup, again, wiped the slate clean. So yeah, Alan Stubbs, not the best manager that Hibs had. I think it's probably fair to say. But again, because I'm basing this on entertainment and happy times and who I love to watch at that point, and yeah, when Alan Stubbs was the manager, we had a good time.
I think, to be fair, the manager who ended 114 years of misery was always going to be held as a hero. Had Pat Fenlon done it a couple of years earlier, he would have been a hero as well, and he wasn't a great Hibs manager either, but he got his 2 cup finals. But yeah, I understand the Stubbs choice, absolutely. We've come to the end of the podcast. We've went into overtime.
But leathered on. How long is that? It's about an hour and a half.
Yeah, that's over 90 minutes.
I don't know if anyone will get to the end of it.
No, but that shows how good this has been, because, you know, it's just flowed and it's been great. And thank you very much for your time, Grant.
That's all. Listen, I've enjoyed it, and I'll follow you, and I'll give it a good listen when it comes out.
Fantastic, Grant. Cheers.